Well, hello there. It's your favorite time of the day, watching a crazy person on the internet render about e-reading devices for manga. So, we are going to try to answer the question, what is the best e-reading device for manga? There are basically three kind of answers that you get when you ask this question online. The first one is that you would need a device with 8 inches, because most manga is around this size, like for example Kobo, Forma or Sage, or there's a whole range of devices from all kinds of manufacturers available those days. You can get one that suits your needs quite easily. And the second kind of answer you would get is that you really need a device with Android support and application support for apps like Tachiyomi. The third answer would be that you need a 10-inch device like a Books Air, Note Air 2, I'm sorry, because there's lots of content like mangas or comics which is released in a format around 10 inches. Well, let's start with the first one. Okay, so let's start with the myth that most manga is released in a format around 8 inches. Most Japanese manga is released in a format which is the Japanese B6, that should be around 8.7 inches, or the ISO A5 format, which should be 10.1 inches. So basically there's a wider range of formats for Japanese print media, if we take into account special editions and magazine releases, but let's get not into much detail. We're just going to assume that there's a lot of content released which comes in a format that is bigger than 8 inches. Well, from my experiences, most foreign releases as well come in a format which is like this, which is almost exactly 10 inches and diagonal. So with that assumption, and us not knowing what kind of scans or how the digital manga is processed which we receive, let's just assume that it's very likely that the source material comes in a format which is taller than 8 inches. And this would mean on a device like a Kobo, Sage or a Forma that we will have some kind of compression, some kind of downscaling, which could result in the fonts being smaller and less readable. Again, we're talking about manga, so you cannot just scale the fonts individually for like you would with a classical ebook. So now to the second answer. You really need a device with the Android operating system for application support. For apps is Tachiyomi, which is more of a gray zone depending on what kind of content you're reading with it, but it's considered for many to be some sort of holy grail for reading and managing your mangas on a digital device. And I agree, for ease of use, that's probably true. You will have the largest library of manga, because like for many digital media we are facing distribution problems, unfortunately, which make piracy often cases the easier way to get your media, especially if we're talking about new releases or stuff that is less mainstream. But I wouldn't say that it's really necessary to have an Android device. For example, there are lots of user-friendly workflows to get your local content onto a Kobo device, and I would figure that that holds true for other devices which have their own operating system. I cannot really comment how easy it is those days for Amazon devices, because I'm sorry, because I will never own one of their devices, but I wouldn't say that having Android operating system is really a necessity, because the most important factor should be the quality of the image that we get. Well, now to the first answer that you get, that you really need a 10-inch device or 10.3 inches. because it's the best device for consuming anything with illustrations, like in this case manga, visual novels, comics, PDFs, technical menus, or whatever you want to call them. And with a device like this, most certainly the source material will not be bigger in a bigger format than what you have here. So that basically means you don't get any kind of downscaling. On the downside, you will have lower pixel density, so lower PPI or pixels per inch on the most common 10.3 inches devices. We are talking about 226 PPI versus 300 PPI on an 8-inch device. And yeah, that's noticeable and results in the impression of less sharpness in fonts and images. So right now there seems not to be a no compromise device that will fit all of your needs. But enough rambling for me. Let's have a closer look at the devices and make a comparison. So I really tried to get a good comparison and took around 90 pictures, all with the same camera settings, at the same distance, by using natural lighting and an LED soft light. Really tried to capture what I was experiencing with my eyes on camera, and as it turned out, it is hard, and I might need better lighting and a better camera for that sort of thing. But as we can see in the top right corner is that paper reigns supreme, and we already knew that when we were going into this. And we're looking for the best e-reading experience. Well, here we have an image from the Girls Last Tour manga 10-inch release compared to the Kobo Ellipsa 10.3 inch in the top left and the Kobo Sage 8-inch in the bottom left. Besides the slightly yellowish tint on the Ellipsa, which you probably won't notice without direct comparison. And yes, I double checked if the backlights were off. You notice how unsharp the images on the e-reader is compared to the paper. I did not include the book's note there into this comparison because it was looking almost identical to the Ellipsa. And in real life, unfortunately not translating well into this picture comparison, the fonts on the 8-inch screen looked a bit sharper with the blacks popping out more. But to me, it still looked like, excuse my language, total ass. If my old Kobo was still functioning, I could swear that even Manga looked somewhat better on it. And I'm not sure if that is because newer screens are just having worse contrast, or it is the added layers of screen protectors on the screens. But at least for manga content or images in general, in my opinion, it is not a pleasant experience, because it feels like my eyes are not in focus. It might be a once you have seen it, you cannot unsee it kind of thing. That doesn't bother the majority of people, but yeah, in this case, at this point, it's not really an alternative to paper or even a tablet with a standard LCD kind of screen. I will not argue about eye strain and all those subjective topics, but most of my manga reading, if not all, happens inside, where I have control over my lighting. So the benefits of e-ink do not outweigh the sharper image on my old Xiaomi tablet. Those devices are not cheap, and certainly the handling of manga content, as we earlier discussed, can be a bit of a hassle. So to answer the question, it depends. But for me, the best manga e-reader is on tablet with good resolution and a nice backlight. Have a nice day.